a drive, way back, it might be, it could be, it is. Holy cow, welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Thank you so much to our awesome sponsors, Wrigleyville Sports, the best sports store in Wrigleyville, and YAGGY Road Roasting Company, based in Valpo, Indiana, serving cups of coffee just as special as the moments you drink them in.
Hello, welcome to Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy, the podcast built brick by brick for Cub fans by Cub fans. I'm your host, Jeff CandidCubs Rogowskis, lifelong Cubs diehard with blue blood in my veins and an old style usually in hand. Today, we're stepping out of the Ivy and we're doing something a little bit different, a little special. Today, joining me from the CHGO podcast, or as Danny Rockhead so nicely calls CHGO, Mr. Cody Delmendo. And yeah, Cody and I met reaching for the same foul ball at Wrigley Field, which is not true, but don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Yeah. Cody, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Jeff. Feeling good about this team right now. I think last year when you had me on, the vibes were completely different. So it's nice to be able to talk about a fun team right now. And they have flaws and they're not perfect, and I can't confidently sit here and say they're World Series contenders, but I'm just enjoying the ride right now. And hopefully I think different on August 1st.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I brought you to talk about today is the trade deadline is quickly approaching, and there's the MLB draft now that seems to kind of take the attention of front offices since it's part of the All-Star festivities. But we'll be hearing rumors and stuff. Obviously, we've already had the gigantic Rafael Devers trade, which was really unique and really changes my perspective on that Giants team, as well as they have some good pitching and finally a big bat in the middle of the lineup. But the Cubs obviously need to make some additions, and I don't think it would be beating around the bush. I'm not saying anything original. The focus is going to be starting pitching.
Yeah, absolutely. The starting pitching for this team right now has actually been awesome. Potential to be great if we just make some good deadline additions here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we'll just kind of go right into it and talk about some targets that, I've been looking at. And I know you guys have been talking about on CHGO. There's a lot of very familiar names, just kind of getting into the weeds and how they'll help the 2025 Cubs. But before we get rolling, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and leaving a review on your favorite podcast app. It helps more brickheads find our show. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Bleacher Bunch Network, which is home of Cubs PS Plus with Mike Waller, Sun Ranto with Andy Rocket, Cup of Cubby Blue with Sarah Sanchez, the Bleacher Bunch Show with all of us, and Baseball Rabbit Hole with Michael Cotton. And if you join the Patreon, there is a daily Cubs game recap show called Cubs Pod. So make sure you are subscribing to the Patreon today. And also, we are still in the midst of our contest with Wrigleyville Sports, which they're giving away a custom Cubs jersey. On top of I'm also giving away a pair of Cubs tickets, and then 10 lucky winners will also be getting a Bricks Behind the Ivy t-shirt. So that being said, let's get started talking about pitching targets. The first pitcher that I wanted to bring up today is probably one of the ones in a list that I would say, we'll talk about three. I'm calling them reaches. We'll call them reaches because we don't know how available they are, and we don't know, what the cost is going to be, if it's going to be cost inhibitive for the Cubs to do it. But they do have a good enough team that they should be kind of pushing more chips into the table to really address the rotation. And the first one I want to talk about is Nationals pitcher Mackenzie Gore. Mackenzie Gore is 3.5 years of control, and he has a solid strikeout rate that went from 9 to 12 per 9. His walks are down significantly. He's having a breakout season, and he's reduced his cutter use, which seems to be what's making him more efficient, and he's increased the slider use. So maybe a little bit of change in grip, maybe a little bit of a little more deception in the slider. And he's got a really nice 12-6 curveball, a little bit more drop than average if you look at Baseball Savant. But yeah, Cody, what do you think about Mackenzie Gore as a possible trade target?
Mackenzie Gore we've talked about him on our show a little bit, but I don't think we've looked at him as like a serious target, only because I don't understand why the Nationals would want to move him. And they're also a team that right now it seems crazy, but they're a team that I feel like could easily find a way and just like go on some hot stretch like in August, like the Tigers did last year, because I think they have the talent. They're just super young, and it just wouldn't make sense to me that they would want to trade Mackenzie Gore. I think he has 2 years of control. Is that what you said?
3.5.
3.5. Yeah, he has so many years of control, and he was part of the Juan Soto trade. And Abrams and Wood have turned out to be great additions for them from that trade. They have Hassel, who came up this year. I know Dylan Cruz he's going through those rookie struggles right now.
Yeah.
But the overarching point though is that they're super young. And listen, if the Cubs were to call and try, I mean that's a guy that I feel like you would have to give up a Cade Horton and I pretty much am like willing to trade anyone of the Cubs prospects outside of Cade Horton. But to get a guy like him, I think you'd have to include Cade Horton. And it might be worth it. 6 years control of Cade Horton or three years of control of Mackenzie Gore? Gore's having his best season as a professional. Maybe he's emerged as one of those Cy Young candidates for the next handful of years. But obviously the Cubs love Cade Horton. So I don't know if the Cubs would do that. And also, like, it doesn't necessarily make sense to even include Cade Horton in a trade. But I'm just saying in terms of what the Nationals would be asking for, I think they would want Cade Horton. And if you don't include Cade Horton, then we're not trading Mackenzie Gore, So, and on top of that, you'd probably have to send Casey or Alcantara, at least one of the two, Triantos. The package for him would be similar to like what the Juan Soto trade was with the Padres and the Nationals. So Nationals have been in that realm before, but they were the ones selling. I guess in this instance they'd still be selling, but I also feel like they're not in a position where they have to move Gore. It's not like Sandy Alcantara with the Marlins, I guess the Marlins don't have to either, but based off how they operate, it sounds like something that they really want to do and they feel the pressure to. I guess it's not like he's a rental, they don't have to move him. So I would love Mackenzie Gore for the Cubs. We just have an all lefty starting rotation in October, but I just feel like it's so unrealistic. And there's a few people in our chat on CHGO Cubs who think that like the Nationals aren't going to be good for another 3 or 4 years. And I just don't see that. I don't understand that at all. Not when you have guys like CJ Abrams and James Wood and some of these other guys, Luis Garcia and Kybert Ruiz, and like they have some form of a nucleus. They just, to me, they'd be competing right now if they just would have spent some money this offseason, which is surprising that they didn't, considering they've spent money before. It's not like they act like the Pirates all the time, So I think it just really, if they moved Gore, it really would just come down to a complete new direction from their front office that I would think would surprise people.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's been a lot of pundits that have talked about them being like maybe next year they'll be the Tigers. Like they might need a veteran to kind of galvanize that group, a more proven player to really just sit in the middle of the lineup for when there's the ebbs and flows. But yeah, I think, it's interesting because I think it's definitely going to be a seller's market. There's going to be way more buyers because of the extra playoff spots. There's not really, like, some of these teams that we're going to talk about players on are still on the fringe of like a really nice week or two of being back in the wild card race, which is what makes this trade deadline more challenging in the modern era of it takes some time for some of these guys to really sort out that they're done. And it makes it more difficult. And I could see a scenario where somebody blows the Nationals away. Maybe they don't believe what he's doing is sustainable. maybe they see, like, since it's a seller's market, they do have a history of trading with the Dodgers. Like, I could see them coming in and, given all their pitching injuries, because they're the freaking Dodgers, and kind of prying them loose. But yeah, I have them as a reach, as someone that is on a team that has a losing record currently, but I think it's going to take a lot to pry him loose, which I think is a really nice transition to the second reach on my list, which is Chris Sale. And I think this is less of a reach. It's a conversation that is going to continue to happen if the Braves continue to stay under 500, underperform like they have. He's a Cy Young Award winner. He's probably a Hall of Famer. He's got a unique fastball, unique slider, huge strikeout rate. And if I didn't prerequisite, I looked at for Cubs targets. The Cubs have the 26th ranked pitching staff strikeout rate. And if you want to succeed in October, you've got to eliminate the BABIP. You have to strike guys out. And that's going to, because the random noise in the playoffs is what can kill you. So I really want the Cubs to find a strikeout artist if they can, and if in the rotation. If not in the rotation, then some guys in the bullpen. But Chris Sale fits that mold. He's already 36. He still has a $19 million a year contract, so the Cubs would have to pick up about 2/6 of that, and then he has a 2026 club option, so there would be potential for an additional year of control. But yeah, Anthropopoulos came on the other day and said that it's not going to happen. He thinks this team can turn it around, which they do have the talent. But yeah, this is, I think, the top of almost every Cub fan's list. I've seen some mumbling about his playoff performance, but like that's not something that would shy me away from a piece that really would make the Cubs like stand out as we finish the season.
I mean, I didn't follow the 2018 postseason like dramatically close because the Cubs broke my heart in that wild card game against the Rockies. But Chris Sale was a big reason why the Red Sox won the World Series, I thought, right?
Yep.
He definitely got the
and
last
he came out of
three
the
outs.
pen, too. Yeah,
he came out of the pen and got the last 3 outs of the World Series. So I don't know who says that they don't feel good about him in the postseason. This guy, Chris Sale, is like my number one. If we can call it a reach, if you want to use the fact that their front office says that he's not available, we're not selling, we're buying this and that. Like you just said when we were talking about Gore, like a lot of things can change in a month. And sure, yeah, the Braves could get hot and find themselves above 500 in mid-July after the All-Star break and be like the 2023 Cubs who, we all thought they were going to sell and then they bought because they went on that 10 or 8 game winning streak or whatever it was, right? And they do have the talent, and having Acuna back is huge for them. I think they've had some underperformance, like Albies hasn't been very good for them. Riley hasn't been as good as I've seen him before. Olsen is up and down. And they've had some injuries too. And then the guy who got caught with PEDs that they signed the offseason, that looks like a bad deal. But I mean, how could they have known that? I'm not even really blaming them on that. That's just tough luck for their front office. But yeah, they have the talent and everything to get back into playoff contention. I mean, I thought they'd be the second best team in the league this year. And, it is shocking to see where they're at. A few weeks ago, I watched them blow a 10-4 ninth inning lead against the Diamondbacks, and they ended up losing 11-10. And like they were booing at Truist Park or whatever place is called that they played. And like, it was just the Brave season has been like fascinating if you just like the perfect storm of bad, But Chris Sale, I mean, if they are under 500, and I'm not just saying like 1 or 2 games, I'm saying like where they're at right now. They're like 7 or 8 games under 500. If they're 7 or 8 games under 500 at the end of July, and whether there's more injuries or things just aren't like the luck isn't turning around, like it's not like Chris Sale is 25. Chris Sale is 36. And I have a lot of respect for this Braves front office. I think they're one of the best in baseball. So like I just feel like it would be incredibly dumb if they didn't trade him based off his age. Now I get that he wouldn't be costing them a ton in 2026. Club option for like $18 million. But man, like you could strike while it's hot and get some prospects, you know what I mean? And I don't know who they would be interested in for the Cubs. I feel like they need a shortstop. because they had like Arcia had that like insanity run in 23, but you know, they DFA'd him this year. I don't no idea who's playing shortstop for them right now. And, you know, I guess the Cubs have like a guy like Rojas, but he's not going to be able to play immediately for them. You know, they also, I'm curious if they would move guys around and maybe be more into a guy like Triantos. But obviously, I would assume that they would be wanting one of the outfield prospects the Cubs have, and Alcantara or Casey. And, you know, I just think that, you know, would I trade Jackson Wiggins for sale? I probably wouldn't, but if it came like if it came down to like you had to include him to get that deal done, and they have made other additions that I'm like, okay, they are like literally just the front line starter away from legitimately having a shot to go make a World Series run, I probably would do it. Like a lot of things would have to play out for me to say that, yes, you should do it. Right now, I would say I wouldn't include Wiggins, but man, like that's just like, that's the fun, like the good and the bad with this trade deadline stuff is because you always have to end up parting ways with guys that you have hope for or like.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I guess you could say it's a reach. I think it's more realistic than a lot of fans think. And it's largely just because like Chris Sale's 36. I don't know why they would want to keep him to finish out a season where they're like back, you know, like they're 12 games back in the NL East right now and like 7 games back in the wild card. Like, and because of their faults, like that's opening a spot for another team, you know, like the Diamondbacks have been bad. So you got the Giants, you got the Padres, then you have the Phillies and the Mets. I just feel like there's one more team that like that's giving it is in many ways kind of not really, but kind of giving a team in the Central a shot. But the Braves being bad has kind of opened up opportunity for other teams. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think just kind of want to circle back. You know, Sahadev Sharma and Patrick Mooney on Northside Territory had mentioned something about pitching prospects that, you know, I've started to think about a little bit more of maybe trade them while their value's high. They're like pitching is so fickle, and there's all these arm injuries now, and you really don't know what you have. And so many top rated pitchers either flame out, get injured, don't really establish as quickly as you want. They get the pressure of that pedigree, a whole bunch of different things going on. So I don't know if not necessarily for this deal. I think, you know, I'd like Wiggins in a deal for something more controllable, but like I'm not allergic to the idea of moving Wiggins at this deadline on the fact that like his emergence could be temporary. Look at Cade Horton, who was a top prospect, slid off that list because of health, and he's technically not really on that list, but like he's looking like we expected him to look in this rotation, which has been really nice for the Cubs as they've managed some injuries. But yeah, I wouldn't be as allergic to. I've come around to the idea of trading whatever you have, especially with the Cubs in this moment. They do have a surplus of outfield prospects, and if that's what can get things done, that's where they can address. But, you know, I think this is a completely different topic for a completely different day. But if you lock up someone like PCA or Kyle Tucker, I'm way more comfortable trading a lot more from the farm system because you have set positions, and PCA is not as important because of the years of control, but Kyle Tucker is very important to that idea. And the Cubs have a lot of these really interesting challenges outside of the trade deadline of Jed Hoyer. Is he getting an extension? And if is his extension before Kyle Tucker's extension? Is one preclude the other? Like what? Those are questions that make trading these prospects an easier answer, but that is a completely different episode of Behind the Ivy.
Yeah, I could sit here all day and talk about that stuff. I mean, I'm basically 5 days a week for the last 2.5 months. But yeah, I mean,
we're a weekly podcast over here, so we only get one every 7.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right though. Like if they would find a way to get an extension on with Tucker here in the next month, then yeah, hell, you get that done. You can send Owen Casey and Kevin Alcantara off wherever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though Hap and Seiya Suzuki are free agents after 26. I
Yes.
mean, you would still have two of the top outfielders in the league on your team. I'm willing to figure it out in left field, with
Sure.
if you don't keep either one of those guys, or if you only keep one, then fine, that person can play left, But yeah, that certainly would make fans' life a little bit easier on the outlook of the future of this team beyond 25.
So I think since we're going to go to the last reach, and this is a complete pie in the sky, and I truly don't think it's going to happen. But there was some early scuttlebutt because they are just a poorly run organization, and I don't care if Pirates fans find this. Like, I think they would agree. Paul Skeens, this is an extreme reach. The Pirates, like they're struggling with prospect rankings. They're struggling with winning. They're not paying anyone. They haven't given out a long-term contract in 5 seasons. Do you move Paul Skeens while the iron is hot? It's 5.5 years of control. He's 23 years old. He's potentially at least in the conversation at minimum of top 3 pitchers in the game. And it would take a monster package. It would be an embarrassing moment for the Pirates. But do you think the Cubs even have the stuff to entertain a deal like that?
Well, I think they have the position players. I mean, isn't that the problem they have, is that they actually have pitching, but they don't have any bats? You know what I mean? And the Cubs have bats that are just kind of blocked right now. Owen Casey would be up here, I think, even though he's got, 30% K rate in AAA
strikeout
right
rate's
now.
an issue.
and Alcantara's kind of had a little bit of a down season in AAA too, whether you want to point that to adjusting to AAA, this or that. That's another debate for another show. But they're still, highly touted prospects. And then you have Triantos too. I mean, they have. It doesn't really matter like who they want position player wise. The Cubs have guys, and the guys that the Cubs have, like, they could easily just be slid in for the Pirates. Like, honestly, if the Cubs made a trade the Pirates, I feel like I would just see the Iowa Cubs on the Pittsburgh Pirates. If they actually magically made that trade. That said, I would give up anyone. I would give up anyone in the Cubs farm for Paul Skeens.
Agreed.
I would give up
players on the major league roster.
Oh, I would
well.
too. Yeah, and I do feel like they would demand a young positional player too. Maybe you'd have to give up that, like, a guy who's established. Like, maybe you'd have to give up a Horner or I don't know. Maybe even a Maya or something like that. I do think that you would have to do something like that. But listen, I love Moises Ballesteros. I'd include him too. Like, he's like my favorite prospect of the Cubs. I'd include Ballesteros. For a guy like Paul Skeens, he's making nothing. He's already, like, I guess you can just say he's a superstar in the league.
Yeah.
The reason I don't think the Pirates are going to trade him is just because they're a bad organization, A, and B, like, he is their moneymaker. He is the reason people come to the park, and with how they operate, it's like, we got to keep the moneymaker around, and it comes down to the fact that, like, they don't have to spend stupid money, but they spend no money. They spend no money.
It's embarrassing.
They paid Brian Hayes, I guess you could say, like a 5-year, $80-some million deal, which for them is a lot of money. For us, it's like whatever. And he just hasn't panned out to be the guy that they hoped. Like, he's great defensively, but he can't hit. O'Neal Cruz is turned out to be a really good player. Brian Reynolds is having a down year this year, but he's overall been a really good player over the years. But then after that, it's like, all I can think about is Connor Joe, and he's not even on the team anymore. And it was only because he destroyed the Cubs,
Yeah, exactly.
It's
the last multi-year free agent contract the Pirates signed was in December of 2016 to Ivan Nova, and it was a 3-year deal.
That's crazy.
It's been nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
They've legitimately been 6 feet under in the ground since Jake Arrieta had that complete game shutout in the wild card game. It's like that they've been buried for 10 years. And, like, I feel bad for Pirates fans because I do think they're like a historic franchise, and they have I think they have a fan base that cares.
Yeah,
they have a great ballpark, but their
beautiful ballpark.
ownership doesn't give a shit, and obviously, like, their front office can only do so much. So if you're going to be that team, you have to be a team that's like the Rays, where you just develop really well, make smart, savvy trades and this and that. I mean, they traded Tyler Glasnow away for Chris Archer. You know what I mean? Like that was a terrible trade off the immediately. I felt like that was going to be bad immediately when that happened. And you know, I just felt like this past offseason was the offseason where I felt like finally they were going to like be a little aggressive and do something. And then they did nothing. They did literally nothing for offense, at least. And it's a shame because they have good pitching.
Exactly. They're on the cusp. Like they remind me of a weird way in the Reds. Like the Reds try a little bit more than the Pirates, but like there's always like that one Achilles heel that keeps them from going over that. And there's this offense. And there were guys that like are even remotely affordable if they didn't want to spend on it that could have supplemented that group and helped really maximize the time you have Paul Skeens if you're already a Pirates like front office person, assuming you're not re-signing him. And that, it's just really disappointing for a franchise. Yeah, that has a beautiful ballpark and it's a super fun place to watch a game. Beautiful views. One of my favorites to visit. That's not the Federal Landmark, but people want to go. Like to put a winning team together, but
all
right,
I would say that I would still say it's like maybe a 1% chance of Skeens being traded. Yeah,
it is. It's very worthy of the Reach name. So those are my strikeout candidates / Reach. I did take a look at another guy, and it was mentioned. I'll give credit to Northside Baseball. Matt Trueblood wrote an article about this guy this week, and I had him on this list after doing some research for this episode and read his article. But I want to give a shout out to Matt. He gave me a chance right over there, so go read that article. But I looked at ground ball rate. Cubs have an elite middle infield. Having a pitcher with a ground ball rate, if you can't find strikeout rate, would play into this offense. Doesn't reduce the BABIP noise that I'm always terrified of, but Jose Soriano of the Angels, Cubs had a lot of conversations about Logan O'Hoppe last year at the deadline that we had heard that trickled out. So they do have some interesting history with the Angels. The Angels are in between competing and not competing. Just like it's not a runaway AL West yet.
You're explaining terrible. The last like 15 years.
Yeah,
of the
exactly. Yeah, it's the Mike Trout hits 3 home runs in the game and they lose 10-3 because they were all solo shots. Like it's still. And then at one point it was Shohei Ohtani strikes out 15. Mike Trout hits 3 home runs. Shohei Ohtani hits 1 home run. They lose 10-4. Like it's just because the bullpen comes in and. Yeah, I think Jose Soriano is an interesting candidate. He's a younger guy, but really the thing is he throws a heavy sinker. He has high velocity. He leads the league with a ground ball rate of 65.9%. I think he's attainable, depending on if the Angels want to talk. Their farm system is a disaster. So like we really have a lot. Like it doesn't matter what kind of player. Like they need it. The team is not deep. They and if they want to throw in a Mike Trout in that deal, throw in a Mike Trout. Like, but that's what do you think about getting a ground ball guy
in the outfield with PCA and Tucker? Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't know where. Like, we would have to give up like Happer or something, which is not something I'd want to do. But holy cow, that would be just like think of the top of the lineup. You go Trout, Tucker, Suzuki, PCA. Whew.
Oh. Don't let me dream about it, man.
Yeah, that will be the show, like fantasy stuff right
there. Yeah. I was looking at his numbers: 86 in the third innings, 15 starts this year. He honestly kind of gives Cubs. I mean, his K per 9 is only 7.3. But like you said, high ground ball rate, 65%, 3.54 earn run average. With a 3.35 FIP. Expected ERA is around 4.02. But you put that, I think the numbers I think they mean something, but also like imagine this guy with the Cubs defense behind him. Those numbers could significantly improve, especially with the ground ball rate that he gets, right? And who knows? Maybe his K rate goes up under the tutelage of the Cubs pitching infrastructure, pitch lab, whatever you want to call it. I don't hate it. I mean, he's not a free agent until 2029. So he's cheap. You'd have to give up something for him. I don't know what. I mean, I really don't know what the Angels are looking for. And their farm system's not good, but they're like one of those teams that like promotes their guys that they draft like really early. I think the guy they drafted in last year's draft, they promoted him this year to like the majors, which is crazy to me. So I don't know, man. Like this guy does make some sense, and if the Cubs have checked in to see if he's even available, like it makes a lot of sense to why they have. Will it happen? We'll see, but I'm not against it. But he does kind of give the same kind of vibe as not necessarily like a Mackenzie Gore, but also like this guy's making no money. Why would the Angels want to move this guy if they are trying to win something at some point with Mike Trout on their team? It's hard. It's laughable to say this because they've been trying to do this for a decade plus.
Well, trying is a strong word too.
Right. They're just a bad organization. I don't know how else to say it. Like, are they trying to win? Like, to me, them trading this guy shows that they just really don't care about winning, not just this year, but even in next year or the year after. And if that's the case, then they should be trying to trade Mike Trout and any other veterans that they have. You know, Tyler Anderson's another one. Like, I don't even know why they signed him to begin with based off how they operate, you know, but he's interesting. I remember when he was the Dodgers, he like kind of revived his career with them, you know.
I have a fun question, and you can shoot me down, but this is coming from a guy that has a Kyle Hendricks jersey on his wall. I've thought about the idea of, like, because of low cost acquisition, if they're talking, like, bringing him back to eat innings as we head towards the end of the year, especially thinking about Matthew Boyd not having had a full season in a while. Cade Horton, he's not going to be on an innings limit, but, like, potentially he could gas out. Ben Brown, depending on how the rotation works out, like, you could comfortably move him to the minors, then bring him back up to deploy him in the bullpen. Like, these are the types of moves that, like, it's not sexy. He's not going to be like the guy starting Game 7 again for the World Series if that were the case. But, like, he has been very durable again this year. He had his best outing versus a struggling Yankees offense. His ERA is still towards one of the highest in the league. Ben Brown was there, and then Kyle Hendricks had his start and went down, and Ben Brown went a little bit up. But would you like to see a Kyle Hendricks reunion just to eat some innings?
This is like when people ask me if I'd like to see an Anthony Rizzo reunion. At least, at least Kyle Hendricks is on a team.
Yes.
I mean, the Cubs defense, I mean, honestly, no. I'd honestly rather
breaking my heart.
Listen, I love Kyle Hendricks. This guy's a Cubs legend. This has nothing to do with him personally. This is just like this. If they went and got Hendricks and he would cost you nothing, it'd probably cost you a
contract for like $2 million.
He would cost you a guy in rookie ball probably, or hell, maybe the Angels just DFA him and you just pick him up. You know, like on one hand, it make it like kind of intriguing. He's got great playoff experience. He's got experience playing on like good teams and being good. You know, like could his numbers be better with this Cubs defense? But I also this guy had one of the higher ERAs in baseball last year, and the park factors at Wrigley Field were awful for hitters, and he still was still wasn't very good for half the season. You know, and like, this is bad timing as of this recording. He just threw 6 innings and struck out 9 Yankees and allowed 0 earned runs. Like, I get it, but
but one start. But
one start. I think he'll do it like every 5 starts or something. He'll have some vintage Kyle Hendricks game, and like, it's cool. It makes me happy, but it feels like if the Cubs were to do that, it's not fully going all in to try and go win a World Series. Like,
this is not the move, but I think, when I think about the Braves team that won the World Series when they picked up like Soler and some other like just ancillary pieces that end up being such a huge part of the team. Not saying Kyle Hendricks is that, but I think like the Cubs should make a move. Like, they need to make a front end or a good pitching move, a really good pitching move, bullpen and starter probably. But like if to survive the rest of the year, maybe save some bullets, I think maybe picking up a starter that just eats innings, that can go out there every 5 days, especially like with Cade Horton, Ben Brown being a bulk of some of the rotation, like just like keep guys fresh, have some options. Because, yeah, like with Assad hurt, Jordan Wicks struggling and also hurt, like the depth of the starting rotation has gotten pretty thin. And like the guys that can go back down with options are only really Ben Brown and and Cade Horton. Like we're like obviously Kyle Hendricks wouldn't be able to do that, but it's an interesting thought that I've had of like, well, if they're going to talk, like, can he be a throw-in just to eat innings, just so they can make it to September, or maybe even go 6-man after they get a little bigger lead, or if they maintain their lead, just to Shota comes back and all those things. So just an interesting thought, but like I respect the opinion. It's like he's not the same guy. Like I'm not going to sit here and talk like, oh, he's turned the corner. He had that one start, but like it's an interesting. I guess the way,
I guess the way I view it is like, okay, when Assad does get healthy, would you rather go with Kyle Hendricks if given the scenario, or would you rather go with a Javier Assad, who we don't know what he'll be, but he has a history of being a guy who can eat innings? Like, to me, like, yeah, they need 2 starters, and one of them's got to be a frontline starter. And then that second starter has got to be like another version of Matt Boyd or Jamison Tyone at the bare minimum. Like that's how I view it. Now,
solid 3, solid 4.
If they want to pick up a third starter and get him for pennies, then I guess Kyle Hendricks is that guy, you know. But I also feel like if you go get Kyle Hendricks, then you're taking away from, you know, what Javier Assad can do for you. Or even Chris Flexen, who's been awesome. And I don't, you know, he's got 0 ERA in the bullpen, but I do feel like if Colin Ray got hurt, they would put Chris Flexen in the bullpen. I really do truly feel that way. So, you know, I think it's one of those things that I think circumstances matter. I'm not against it, but I also am like, okay, if they went and got him, he'd be like the third starter that they picked up.
Yeah,
correct. He would be a guy that, you know, can spot start for you, but you're not putting him in the rotation, you know. And I feel like you getting traded to a winning team, Kyle Hendricks probably wouldn't care, but
I think it's just bodies. That's it's really like right now Javier Assad and we'll have more information in the next few weeks, obviously. Like until he's pitching, he's not an option. So like I've started looking at like low cost guys that like just can get out there. And like that's that's not the priority. It's definitely not the priority. So,
if you tell me that Assad is like out for the year, then it definitely makes a lot more sense than too.
So I think I'm gonna wrap off with just one more name, and it's the name that's been mentioned a bunch. There's a bunch of other names that are out there. Like we could talk about Zach Gallen, like 1-year deal, like has a high pedigree. If the Arizona Diamondbacks fade in an extremely challenging and competitive NL West, then might be worth a call. I've got some Twins guys, but like they've got to fall off. Joe Ryan, good strikeout right from the rotation. Yohan Duran, bullpen guy, really high velocity fastball, 70% ground ball rate. Would be really interesting. Griffin Jacks, 30 years old, really high K rate. Those are some other names. We don't have to talk about those, but I want to talk about Sandy Alcantara, or Sandy Alcantara. I'm not sure which one is the correct way of saying it, but
I truly don't either.
I have a lot of hesitancy with him depending on cost. I think the cost here is the most important. If it's just some position players, I'm concerned, at least from my perspective, that this isn't good enough of a move for the rotation unless the Cubs truly see something like about what he's been doing. There has been a trend with he's recovering from Tommy John. Command is the last thing to come back, is the general understanding of Tommy John recovery. And he's looked better in his last 3 starts, 17 innings pitched, 2.12 ERA, 45% ground ball rate. He's about a 50% ground ball rate guy in his career. He won the Cy Young in 2022. He's still 29. Like he signed through 26. He's got a 27 a club option, only $11 million a year, but the health and really like what he is, if he's going to cost a significant prospect package to get him on the Cubs, I don't love this as the move. What do you think?
So me and good pal Corey Friedman talked about Sandy Alcantara the other day, the next day after his last start, which as of this recording in June is like a 2.12 earn run average. He's that said, those two of those three starts was the Rockies and the Pirates. But he went 5 innings, 2 earned against the Phillies in his last start. So let's call a spade. He's been not very good this year. Like his April and May have been terrible. He at one point had almost a 9 earn run average, but his last 3 starts has brought it down under 7. I think if you want to look at it optimistically or look at him optimistically, he won the Cy Young Award in 2022, wasn't very good in 2023, which led to having Tommy John surgery. And now we are where we're at this season. The way I look at it optimistically is most guys struggle coming off Tommy John. Would I expect them to struggle like he did for the first 2 months? I mean, I guess not, but all I know is that the stuff is still there. He still throws hard. My optimistic look on it is, all right, the Cubs have brought in dudes who have fallen off and revived. And I can't even confidently say that this guy has fallen off. I just think he's coming back from a major arm surgery, and it's going to take some time. So, for me, optimistically looking at it, it's like you could get this guy at a really cheap price comparatively to what it could be in a year from now. You know what I mean? Like, what if the Marlins just decide to hold on and be like, all right, maybe it's more value next year or in the offseason, you know?
Yeah.
But
and I think that's where my concern is. I feel like if, depending on how the Cubs evaluate him, I feel like the work that needs to be done would be better if the deal was made in the offseason. And if, like, the Cubs see something, can they fix it on the fly? But, I mean, recent, like, it's not that recent, but the Cubs have been successful with guys like this in the past. And, like, Jake Arrieta is one that really sticks out. It's not obviously that recent, but, like, they made him go back to what he was before. And, you know, he's changed his arm slot a bunch since he last pitched. He's down 3%. You know, and like his breaker isn't the same, and that's what made him elite before. And maybe that's just because he's definitely throwing it way less than he used to, and it's probably part of the recovery. And I also have like a theory that like the Marlins threw him out there to show that he was healthy because they do want to trade him, and like they didn't really care about the results. Like they really wanted to get him pitching in front of major league guys as quickly as possible. It might not have been the best choice for Sandy Alcantara, but it is the best choice potentially for the Marlins organization if they're trying to shop this guy, which like his name has come up a bunch. So I don't know if I'm as worried about the results, but like they definitely stick out as being quite bad.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there is plenty of reason to believe that moving forward, he could be that dude like he was in 2022 for you, even this year, because even though he has been bad, last 3 starts, the Marlins are going to wait until the end of July, right? They're going to wait this out as long as they can. So say this trend of the last 3 starts continues through the end of June and through mid-July. I understand you said you don't really care too much about results, but I care about, I'll just be honest, like I care about some of the results. You got to see this guy have success at the same time. Now, in terms of caring about results, like, yeah, I guess if he really just sucked all the way up until mid-July and the Marlins really just wanted to get rid of him, then I guess it'd be a cheaper price. The reason he's going to be expensive is because he's got like 2 more years of control after this year. I think that last year too is like a club option. So even if he does suck next season, it's not like you have to have him in 26 if you don't want him. And that's a whole, like, we'll talk about how bad of a trade it is, I guess, if that were to play out, if the Cubs actually did it. But I think he's one of those guys that makes a lot of sense for the Cubs. And, you know, he originally started with the Cardinals. When he signed with the Cardinals in 2013, Dan Kantrovitz was their scouting director in St. Louis, who's now a scouting director with the Cubs. So there's eyes in the organization for the Cubs that saw Sandy Alcantara when he was like a prospect, or even before a prospect, I guess, but like coming up, like they have eyes in the organization that know him. And I think that's beneficial. And so, I mean, I'm not giving up anything at all for him because he hasn't been good enough, but to me, there's a good enough upside for me to buy in on someone like him. And probably have to send Casey. I'd send him Triantos. If you got to send some of your reliever prospects, like you think they'd be interested in like a Luke Little, like I would throw him in there. Like, to me, like it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, my opinion on that could change drastically. And a month ago it was more about like, can we take a flyer on the guy? At least he's going to be cheaper. Like, I was still into him when he was stinking it up, But yeah, I think that there's a lot of reason to want this guy, and I'm in. I wouldn't give up anything for him. But to me, if Chris Sale really is a reach, then Sandy Alcantara is my number one, Jeff.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And this is our Birds Behind the Ivy nerd alert moment of the episode. Taking a look at his pitch breakdown by game in 2025. And this is something I've been watching the last few weeks, just seeing if there's been an increased usage of some of the breakers as he's potentially gotten healthier in 2025. And it seems like he's, starting to up his sinker usage. He was on some of his starts in May using the fastball whole bunch, and maybe he was looking for his command there, and now that he's found some of his command, as you can see in these last 3 starts, which we had kind of talked about, like he's been much better, and it's kind of normalized in a really even split of all the pitches. So it'll be something to see, or something to watch as the weeks go on. But yeah, it's I think on cost, if he's a slightly affordable option, and only costs a few outfield prospects, which the Cubs have plenty, that's got to be the top tier if Chris Sale is not out there. And hell, why not both? Let's go nuts.
Now you're really getting me dreaming again.
So, Cody, thank you so much for hopping on. It was a real pleasure. If you want to take a moment, just plug some of the things you guys got going on. You got like Bleacher Fridays and things like that, CHGO, and where folks can find you on social media.
Yeah, so if you're listening this entire time, you don't know who I am. I co-host the CHGO Cubs podcast with my good pal Luke Stuckmeyer, Corey Freeman, and Brendan Miller.
Luke Stuckmeyer, another Valpo grad.
Yes. We do live post games Sunday through Thursdays, I guess you could technically say. Immediately after the game, normally. You mentioned Bleacher Fridays. We call it Friday 120 Club. It's just like a community event that we do. You buy your own bleacher ticket. We meet up at Murphy's at like 10 a.m. every Friday before a 120. Usually have a couple beers, talk about the Cubs, vent about the Cubs, whatever's going on. And then we always sit in left field bleachers, normally around the same spot, because my Thai guy saves us a bunch of seats. So it's turned into a really cool event. Jeff, haven't seen you there. Would love to see you there sometime.
It's hard to get away from the kids and work.
I hear you. But yeah, no, post game for the show. It's post game on our YouTube channel, CHGO Cubs. We just started this year. So give it a search, subscribe, would appreciate it. But we're on social media, all platforms. Twitter, Instagram, just CHGO_Cubs. And yeah, man. So,
well,
that's it.
Just a spoiler alert, and tells you when we're recording this podcast. Pete Crow Armstrong just hit another home run. It's 2-1 Cubs in the bottom of the first. Number 20, MVP at it again.
MVP at it again.
An unbelievable season, and why we're talking about additions at the trade deadline. So, yep, if you haven't hit that like, subscribe button, if you've not reviewed on your podcast platform, make sure you're doing that. And also, don't forget about our contest where you can win a custom Cubs jersey thanks to Wrigleyville Sports and a pair of Cub tickets. And then we're giving away 10 Bricks Behind the Ivy t-shirts. There's a lot more information on all the ways you can enter on our Instagram. So go check that out. Go follow us there and enter a bunch of times. We're giving away, we're going to announce the winner during the recording of the episode that comes out on June 30th. So you still have some time. Make sure you check that out. Thanks, Cody, so much. And until next time, Brickheads, go Cubs.